say the very present all the time.
Good evening, everybody. It's 6:30, so we'll migrate towards our seats. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Alpharetta City Council. It is at 6:30, and we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'll note for the record that all members of council are present and accounted for, except for Councilman Binder, who I am told is on the way and should be here very shortly. So if you will, please stand if you can and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this evening we get to kick off the meeting with a proclamation from Miss Betty Ann Busby, a lady that's near and dear to all of our hearts. So if you will, please welcome Ms. Busby, and those of you that would like to recognize her, please come forward. Thanks, sir. Director Harris, if you could come up and join us as well. Please come over. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a tough one to get through. Ms. Busby is a very special lady, as you can see by the employees that are here to recognize her. So we're all here to award her with a proclamation for her dedication to the people and the employees of the city of Alpharetta. So unfortunately, I've only had 8 years to spend working with her. So I'll let City Administrator Bob Regas say a few words about her. He's had the opportunity to work with her for a lot longer.
Well, thanks, Mayor. And yeah, we got together this morning and said a few words then, Betty Ann. Look, you're the heart and soul of the employee population here, and you mean so much to all of us, not just employees, but our families. You know, the things we've gone through together, folks who have marriages, divorces, births and deaths in our families, and with our employee population. The one constant in all of that, in the joys and the sorrows, is Betty Ann. And you've just done an incredible job, and yeah, there's no replacing you, and hate to see this day come, Betty Ann, but on the other side, we're so happy that you are retiring, and we just hope that you have so many years of health and happiness ahead of you, Betty Ann.
Thank
so
you, sir.
Congratulations on speaking for every employee and their families. We love you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Director Harris.
Well, it'll be a lot of the same. Last 2 weeks sort of hit us hard, been a lot of emotional goodbyes.
Yes.
I know as a supervisor, I think I said this morning, that you can evaluate somebody, you know how they are with you, but you're always looking for how do others perceive them, and what do they get in return from this employee? And that area just knocked it out of the park. I get more comments, or received more comments over 14 years as your supervisor, of just how many lives you touched, and been there from the births to the end, unfortunately, marriage, divorce, like you said, just literally treating every member, every employee and their family as if they truly were your family and a loved one. And you just have been beautiful. Everybody loves you, and just can't say enough. But thank you. But at this time, it's so good. We're also so happy to know that you're about ready to have your retirement. You've gotten so many other people to that point, and now you can get ready for yourself and take care of yourself, and that just makes us all happy. I think that you're going to go on and have a great retirement, and we love you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Thanks, sir. Bob, I believe you wanted to say something.
I think this is kind of a special time. These don't happen every day here, and if there are 2 or 3 employees that would like to come forward and just make remarks from just you and what she means to you, now would be a good time.
So try to do this without getting all teary-eyed. It's not working already. Lieutenant Doug French, Police Department, those who don't know me. My daughter Megan, diagnosed with leukemia when she was 4 years old, relapsed a couple years later. The words, "I don't know what I would have done without her," don't even begin to describe it. Mr. Regis was there as well, but again, I don't like to think about where my family would be without you. Megan is a senior in college,
Oh my God.
so
That's awesome.
Is there anyone else that would like to come forward? Okay.
Thank you. I'm Paul Miller. I'm a dispatcher, 911. A few years ago, Betty Ann's been helping me ever since I started here. I keep having to have surgeries for some reason. But a couple of years ago, I was in the hospital for almost a year, and I almost died, and in a coma and all this other stuff. Betty Ann got me and my wife through all of the paperwork, through all of everything, and I think the best look I've ever seen on anyone's face was when I showed up in her office afterwards. And I was walking with a cane, and she was just so shocked. And it was, like I said, one of the best things I've ever seen. And I just want to say thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Go ahead.
My name's Mark McCoskey. I'm a captain with the fire department. Betty and his family. When I found out that she was retiring, I told that person, I said, sure does suck for us, but she very well deserves it. Words cannot express everything she's done for us. And she's the true member of our family. Love you.
I'm honored. Thank you.
I'd like to make the comment about the light side and the lightheartedness of Betty Ann. I'm Kurt Kirby. I'm with the Recreation and Parks Department. And almost 27 years ago, a young program coordinator who was just learning Alpharetta in his first real professional job. And about 2 weeks after I began working, I got a strange phone call from a nice old lady named Miss Magoo. She was asking questions about the Mansell House, and I really didn't know, and she knew this. I really didn't know anything about the Mansell House, and I was just trying to get through and after a few minutes, a laugh went over the phone. It was Betty Ann, and then the acting Human Resources Director, who played a joke on me to break me in as a member of the family, City of Alpharetta. Since then, we have had a special connection, and she's walked me through a lot of tough decisions, and I greatly appreciate her and love her very much.
Is there anyone else?
Betty Ann has been super special to me and my family. She introduced me to my wife. She's taking care of my kids. Like everybody else said, I'm not going to be able to keep this going. It's going to be hard to be here without you. We're going to miss you, and that's all I can talk about.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, then I get the honor of reading the proclamation from one of the nicest ladies I've ever met. Proclamation by the Mayor and City Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia. Whereas Betty M. Busby began a career with the City of Alpharetta on June 26, 1989 as an Administrative Secretary, Personnel Benefits Coordinator. In 1992, her title changed to Benefits Coordinator, and on July 14, 2007, she became the Benefits Manager. Her extensive benefits knowledge, guidance, and kindness has provided the city's employees and spouses unparalleled support over her 31 years at the city. And whereas Betty Ann Busby has served on the board of directors for the Police Academy League and been on the phone and an active member for many years, she has worked as an organizer for Powell Balls and Raffles, and whereas Betty Ann Busby was named Employee of the Quarter in the second quarter of 1997 and in the fourth quarter of 2002 for her creation of the city's wellness program. She was instrumental in the City of Alpharetta being named one of the 2012 Atlanta Business Chronicle Atlanta's Healthiest Employers, first place winner in medium-sized employer category, and again in 2013 for the second year in a row, which had never been done. This honor distinguishes your organization as providing the best health and wellness benefits for employees. Other awards include Cigna Wellbeing Award winner in 2020 and American Heart Association Workplace Health Achievement Index Gold Status 2020. And whereas Betty Ann Busby championed the creation of the city's wellness program aimed at helping our employees and their families. This program, along with her informative lunch and learns, newsletters, on-site blood drives, angio screens, and annual flu shot clinics, helps reduce the likelihood of developing chronic illnesses and their effects. She's introduced and managed successful and well-attended health fairs, and whereas Betty Ann Busby has facilitated the transition from a member of the GMA pension plan to our own employee standalone defined benefits pension plan, she has helped establish the defined contribution plan for new hires and coordinated retirement planning sessions for our employees with our investment consultants. And whereas Betty Ann Busby has led by conviction that each and every employee and their family are truly members of her family. She has cried, laughed, played, prayed, and stressed with countless employees. She goes beyond the call of duty. Why'd you have to make it so long? I wouldn't have cried so much. She goes beyond the call of duty to reach out to hospitals, doctors, and our carriers. Her strong 11-year partnership with corporate health partners has helped to ensure that a family member gets the best service, especially in those critical care instances. She has advocated the importance of our employee assistance program to
withdrawal and coordinated immediate response to counseling following public safety critical incidents. Now, therefore, we, the mayor and city council of the city of Alpharetta, do hereby thank Betty M. Busby for her tireless support of Alpharetta and service to the community, and wish her many happy years in her retirement. We will all miss her. Proclaim this 15th day of February 2021.
I'm honored. Thank you. Excuse me as I remove my mask. Thank you. There are empty seats because we are in a very, very stressful time. But the seats that remain empty, I see the eyes and the hearts of so many employees that aren't here with us tonight. Perhaps they're home with their families. Perhaps they've moved on. Perhaps they've retired. And we know definitely of a few that are in heaven still watching down over us. I am honored. My name is Betty M. Busby, and I stand before you all this very day. My heart is full because you have given me so much love. You have allowed me to become part of your family. You have allowed me to walk behind you. Sometimes I needed to walk behind you, and sometimes I gave you a little kick when you needed it. But it was only because of the fact that we are City of Alpharetta employees. We are the best. To the City of Alpharetta, to the mayor, to the city administrator, to the council, all those that I have served, even before these fine gentlemen and lady are on this panel. You all have allowed me to do my job. You have given me the opportunity to do what I love best. Back in the day, when we were growing, we all learned that if we worked together and stayed together, we'd get through. And look what we've created. Take credit, those of us that have been here for this number of years, we stayed for a reason. We stayed because we loved our city, because we loved each other. We loved our families. We loved being loyal to one another and everybody getting through. This day has come, and I'm grateful. I miss the opportunity for my husband to be with me to share this evening and for my family to share this evening. But then again, I have my family right here. I wish all of the employees the very best. Continue on to be strong. I often say to people to maintain a priority because of the fact that don't mix it up. Number one, yourself. Number two, your family. Number three, your job. We have an opportunity here at the City of Alpharetta, and we have had an opportunity to be the best. And that can always happen as long as we stick together. When I first came to the City of Alpharetta back in 1989, I applied for a position in the personnel office, as it was called then. I had the opportunity to replace a lady that was retiring, a fine lady. Her name was Miss Lonnie Rainwater. And Lonnie Rainwater was there for the City of Alpharetta and there for the employees. And I can tell you that everyone loved Lonnie because every time someone came in to meet this new kid, who didn't go to Milton High School, wasn't from Alpharetta, wasn't from Georgia, this new kid, I always heard from each and every person, wow, Betty Ann, you've got some big shoes to fill. Wow, Lonnie, think she's going to be able to make it? I heard that over and over and over again. I thought to myself, wow, there's something really here at the City of Alpharetta. I made it my goal, I made it my personal goal to try and fill those shoes as best as I possibly can. I hope that Lonnie Rainwater is up in heaven smiling, hoping that I did a good job. But that was important to me. because of the fact of all those that Lonnie served, I wanted to continue on the legacy. So today is my last day. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to my director, Mr. Tom Harris, Director of Finance. Look, I'm an HR head. Here I am going over to finance. Mr. Harris said, Busby, I'm going to make a finance person out of you. And I said, Mr. Harris, I'll make an HR person out of you. Great relationship. I've learned so much from Mr. Harris, so much. To my coworkers, to those that I've worked closely with, I am hoping that there's one particular person that is seated in this room that will hopefully have the opportunity to come back to benefits. She will serve the employees very well once again, and I know that the employees already love her, and I'm grateful to her for her friendship, and I'm grateful to her for who she is. So, I thank you, and I am so honored, and thank you so much for everything that you have done for me, and everything that I've given, you've returned back to me 100 times. So I thank you. I thank you, Mayor, Council, Mr. Regas, Sam Thomas, City of, so nice to see Sam. So, thank you all. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. I love you. God bless you all. I know, so I'll get right upstairs.
No overtime now.
Thank you.
Now, don't go anywhere
Oh,
yet.
oh, yeah, okay, sir.
Director Robinson, I believe you had something you wanted to say?
We do, yes, thank you. So, well, correct. Knowing that public safety is Betty Ann's favorite department in the city, she would never say that, I know. No, seriously, we thought it would be a good time to come and give you a special recognition as well. There are no words to even describe what she's meant to us. You know, we are a family as a city, but we always consider public safety a very tight-knit family as well, and Betty Ann has been a part of that family for a long, long time. And so never have I seen somebody in a position like hers that is so good at what she does, but has the passion and the heart and love for the people that she's taking care of. And that's what makes her special above anybody else in a position like this. You know, our job as city employees is to serve, but you want to talk about a great example of serving. It's what this young lady right here has been doing for us for years. And so we are honored that you are a part of the public safety family. We want to give you a public safety retirement gift that we would give anybody else.
Oh, my God.
That has our patches and our badges and stars for a chief, because you'll always be chief in our heart. How about that? So, thank you for everything you've done for us.
It was absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Okay. I've got to get my rest of my work done now. I got to.
Thank you, everyone. I will note for the record, the Councilman Binder has managed to join us in that presentation. And now we'll move on with the consent agenda for this evening. And the consent agenda for this evening consists of the council meeting minutes from the meeting of January 25th, 2021, the financial management report for the month ending December 31st, 2020, and alcoholic beverage license applications for PH-21-AB-03, Any Two Cards, Inc., DBA Brimstone Restaurant and Tavern, 10595 Old Alabama Road Connector, as well as PH-21-AB-04, Lily Sushi LLC, DBA Lily Sushi Bar, 2020 South Main Street, Suite H, Alpharetta, Georgia, 30009. an alcohol license permit number PH-21-AB-05, Thumes Kitchen LLC, DBA Thumes Thai Kitchen, 5950 North Point Parkway, Suite 100, Alpharetta, Georgia 30022. Is there anyone who would like to remove anything from tonight's consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Merkel, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So we'll move on to the old business portion of tonight's meeting, and that consists of one item, PH-20-18, Unified Development Code text amendments for North Point overlay. This is the second reading, so there will be no public comment. Director Cook?
Mayor and Council, there have been no changes since the first reading, but I can answer any questions you may have.
Does anyone on council have any questions about this? Thank you, Ms. Cook. Mr. Thomas,
Yes,
do you
sir.
mind reading the ordinance for us, please, sir?
An ordinance to amend Article 2 of the Unified Development Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend Section 2.10 North Point overlay with respect to the overlay boundaries and priority areas to repeal conflicting ordinances and for other purposes.
Thanks, sir. Any questions or discussion from council? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion to approve PH-20-18 Unified Development Code text amendments, North Point overlay, and the ordinance is read by Mr. Sam Thomas.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Merkel. Motion to approve by Councilman Richard. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the motion to approve PH-20-18 Unified Development Code text amendments, North Point overlay, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So that'll wrap up old business for tonight, and we'll move on to the new business portion of tonight's meeting. And the first item is Boards and Commissions Appointment, Cultural Arts Commission. Councilman Merkel.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor and Council, I come to you tonight in support of adding Miss Melody Cookson as an alternate member on the Cultural Arts Commission. Ms. Cookson's got an extensive background in multiple areas of art, performing, you name it. She's got, her resume speaks for herself, and she's with us here tonight. And I want to thank her and honor her and appreciate the fact that you're willing to take this position. And I think the city will be a better place in our arts community because of it. So I bring it to you tonight for approval.
It's an alternate position, so it is something we have to vote on. So we have a motion, nomination, a second by Councilman Hives. Any discussion? Thank you for your willingness to serve. So all those in favor of approving Ms. Melanie Cookson to the Cultural Arts Commission as an alternate, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously.
Yes, thank you.
Next item up under new business is the approval of fiscal year 2021 mid-year budget amendment. This is the first reading. Director Harris, I believe you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the first reading, ordinance reading of the mid-year budget amendment for 2021. It, in effect, recognizes either initiatives that have already taken place in the budget or things that have become priorities and for the remaining part of the fiscal year. The first section deals with general fund operating initiatives in the amount of $240,000 approximately. Most of these we spoke about at the retreat, and they're there listed on pages 3 through 4. Next part is the impact fee fund is recognizing approximately $200,000 for Union Hill Mid-Block Crosswalk and establishing a match for certain grants for the Alpha Loop. Then the last third section on page 6 is dealing with appropriating approximately $212,000 from non-allocated capital to fund, again, several items that I believe for the most part we spoke about at the retreat. If you have any specifics, I think some of the departments are here as well as I can answer some of them.
Do we have any questions from council? Thank you, Director Harris. Mr. Thomas? Need you to read the ordinance, please, sir.
An ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to adopt the mid-year fiscal 2021 budget for certain funds of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, appropriating the amounts shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the item of revenue anticipations, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available.
Thanks, sir. Any questions from council at this time? Seeing none. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak about the mid-year budget, please do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir. I make a motion to approve the ordinance to adopt the mid-year fiscal 2021 budget as read by Sam Thomas.
We have a motion by Councilman Binder, a second by Councilwoman Richard. Any discussion? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the motion to approve the fiscal year 2021 mid-year budget amendment as read by City Attorney Sam Thomas, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass 6-1. Next item up will be Georgia Firefighter Standards and Training Council Fireworks Tax Grant. Director Robinson.
Good evening. This is a $9,200 grant that we would like to apply for. The match is $920, and this is regarding funding to help us meet our firefighter cancer reduction initiative with some equipment that would be beneficial to that. So we're coming here asking for your approval to go for the grant, and again with a $920 match on a $9,200 grant.
Any questions from council on this item? Thank Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
What do you think the possibility of us getting that grant would be? Would you like to speculate?
I prefer not. Based on what I was reading about the grant, it's a pretty tight. There's not a lot of funds out there, so you never know. But I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm 100% confident we're going to get it. So I mean, I'd like to think we have a pretty good shot at it, but who knows? So,
you never know.
You never know.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this grant application?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak on the item, please feel free to do so right now. Seeing no one, will close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that council approve the submission of the fiscal year 2021 fireworks tax grant application to the Firefighter Standards and Training Council and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents. The total outlay by the city, if the grant is given, would be $920 for the city.
A second.
We have a motion by Councilman Hypes, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. And that was to approve fireworks grant application, an amount not to exceed $80 in total, but funds from the city would be $920, and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents. Any comments from council? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So the next item up on new business is consideration of a resolution in support of T-SPLOS 2. Mr. Regas, I believe you have this item.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I believe in previous meetings between the mayors and the county commission has asked for a resolution from cities to, if they are willing at this point in the junction to support T-SPLOS 2. So that's what is before you tonight. And this doesn't approve projects or anything. I think this is just an indication to the commissioners that you're willing as a body to go forward, which would lead to further steps, which would lead to an approval of a list in probably June or July.
Councilman Burnett.
Bob, do you know of other cities doing this week or next week, or are we kind of by ourselves? Thank you.
Councilman, I'm not sure. I've not been privy to those mayoral conversations with the board. Mayor,
Bob, I'll take that since I have been on the calls. We've had several meetings by Zoom with Fulton County Commission as well as the other mayors. I don't remember the number and the specifics of how many have already passed the resolutions, but I know that several have. Several passed them several weeks ago. I wanted to hear from the entire group again last week before I brought the item forward to make sure that it had overwhelming support. It has overwhelming verbal support, and I would suggest, and I can get the numbers from Fulton County, who has passed it, but 3 or 4 of the cities, primarily, I believe, in South County, but I believe a couple of North Fulton cities have also passed resolutions. I think Roswell, Mayor Henry said they had voted on one. I think Johns Creek voted, but I'm not sure anything passed, so they didn't support it. That was my understanding. But I'll be glad to provide that information because I'm sure Fulton County is keeping detailed information on that, and I may have it in an email, but I don't have it in front of me. I know that some have and some had not at this point. Yes, sir.
Can you tell me the rationale for not passing a T-SPLOS?
No, I can't.
Okay. Okay. That fits in line. Thank you.
Councilman Binder.
I know the county and the mayors have been in discussion of the opportunity of transit and T-SPLOS going in there. Where is that? And does it need to be considered as part of this resolution? And are we opening the door that the county can add transit as part of this?
Well, nothing we do tonight commits us to moving forward, okay? So this is a resolution in support of the concept of renewing T-SPLOS. In the conversations I've had, I've made it quite clear that in conversations in workshops, public workshops, and individual council members, that our council unanimously supports renewal in its current form, which includes no increase for transit or no set aside of the current 3/4 of a penny for transit. In the conversations we had last week, the city of Johns Creek was the only city that did not pass any resolution in support of T-SPLOS renewal in some form. The city of Roswell passed renewal in its current form, but they also, I think, passed a resolution requesting that individual cities have the option to also pass a percentage for transit on an independent city municipal level. And 2 cities on the south side, I believe it was College Park and South Fulton, but I'm not positive about that. I know South Fulton was one. Both supported renewal of T-SPLOS, but they did want a transit component. So the next meeting we'll have is still to determine what form it'll move forward in. But the overwhelming support was for renewal, and there was more than the minimum 60% required who did support it in its current form. So, once again, this doesn't commit us to doing anything. We still get to see what's going to be on the ballot. It just allows us to put down a formal request that it be presented, and we go through this process of identifying all of the lists from the individual cities of projects.
Because we still have the opportunity as cities, the county, the mayors all will say whether the cities have voted or are in favor or not of T-Splosh moving forward. And this is not what we're voting on tonight.
Right, and my understanding is that this begins the process of each city creating their list of projects, and then there will have to be an IGA of some form that we will have to formally pass, requiring, very clearly what's going to be in the T-Splosh, whether there'll be more for transit or any of those things. So this is just the first step and doesn't commit us to further participating if for some reason it changes form. You're welcome. Any other questions from council? Thank you, Bob. Sam, I believe we have a resolution.
Yes, sir, we do. A resolution of the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, requesting the Fulton County Board of Commissioners to call for a referendum on November 2, 2021 to renew the Metropolitan County Transportation Special Local Option Sales Tax, T-Splosh 2, for an additional 5-year period and for other purposes. Whereas on or about November 8, 2016, the voters within the Metropolitan County Special District, composed of unincorporated Fulton County and the Fulton cities other than Atlanta, the district, passed T-Splosh 2 for a term of 5 years at a rate of 0.75% for transportation projects only. And whereas the approval for T-Splosh 2 included a majority of registered Alpharetta voters, and whereas the T-Splosh has produced substantial revenue for much-needed transportation projects within the district, including Alpharetta, and whereas the need for a revenue source to support existing and new transportation projects persists, and whereas the current T-Splosh 2 expires in March of 2022 unless renewed in the manner provided by law. Whereas the renewal process includes the requirement of an additional referendum to be called by the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, and whereas the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta believe it is appropriate to put the voters of the district the option to renew T-Splosh 2 for 5 years at a rate not to exceed 0.75%. Now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor and Council hereby request the Fulton County Board of Commissioners to place on the November 2, 2021 ballot the question of whether T-Splosh 2 shall be renewed for an additional 5-year period at a rate not to exceed 0.75%.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, sir.
If anyone would like to come forward and speak on renewal of T-Splosh, now's your chance to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we approve a resolution of support for a preliminary list of the transportation projects for a possible T-Splosh 2.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem and a second by Councilman Merkel. And the motion was to approve the consideration of the resolution in support of T-Splosh 2, and is read by City Attorney Sam Thomas. Any discussion? Councilman Hines.
Just so we have a clear record, the motion has made,
Turn your mic on.
is the motion is made for consideration of a resolution, or is the motion is made for a preliminary list? I thought I heard preliminary list, which is a workshop item coming up next. I just want the record to be clear what we're voting on.
It's to approve a resolution of support.
Okay. Okay. If that's the motion, then I just want to make sure our record was clear.
Okay.
I may have mistakenly read the wrong item as I repeated it, but it was my understanding it was the resolution to support. Any other questions from council? All those in favor of the motion, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. Councilman Bynum, and it does pass unanimously. Now we'll move on to the workshop, where the first item is the preliminary list of transportation projects for possible T-Splosh 2. Bob, if you'll do the intro.
Before Pete comes up to present the list that you've seen a couple of times already, I believe in your packet tonight is the timeline that we discussed a little bit with the previous item, but so you'll see where we are. We're developing our project list. June, jurisdictions will actually vote on a project list. And then we get together with the county for the IGA that makes it official, gets on the ballot. The county then requests to be on the ballot in August for the November election. So with that said, I'll get out of the way and let Pete present things to you.
Thanks, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Get some things papers real quick. James, I'm gonna put this. All right. Mayor and Council, this is a list you have seen plenty of times. And tonight the goal is to start dwindling this $112 million project list down to about $60 million. And where that number came from is they're projecting we would receive approximately $500 million out of T-SPLOST funds. Alpharetta would receive approximately 11% of that $500 million based off of population. Now, this is back, the number I'm using is from T-SPLOST 1, so that number could go up. So it's 5 million is what we're.
Now that you mention that, that raises a question. So if you don't mind, I'll interrupt you to ask the question. I know it's based on population. The new census should be available within the next few months. Maybe either you or Director Harris would know. Would that distribution be based on new census numbers?
I would have hoped so.
I would too. Director Harris, do you happen to know? Okay, we'll go with the assumption now that it'll be the census numbers as provided this year, but thank you. I just thought I'd check. I was aware.
Yep, so we'll go for, so you've heard us talk about tiers in the past, 1, 2, and 3, and I want to try to get out of your memory banks at all. T-SPLOST tiers are completely different than anything you've heard in the past conversation. So T-SPLOST Tier 1 is 85% of the projected revenue. Those are Tier 1 projects. That equates to about $46, $47 million, utilizing the $55 million number. Tier 2 is the remaining 15%, and Tier 3 would be the 110% over. So if people are spending a lot more money, revenue's going in, we'll have a list of projects to go for that. That doesn't mean you have to do Tier 1 first all the way. You can go to Tier 2 and Tier 3, given how funds are coming in and what priorities change over 5 years. We did that in Tier 1, or excuse me, in T-SPLOST 1. So with that, I open it up for conversation. I do have some exhibits if you need them for this list going through. But as you can see, the first grouping of projects up there is $73 million. Granted, a large dollar amount of that is North Point Parkway, which is $25 million. So if you reduce that down, we reduce to $73 million. I will preface that the majority of all these projects do meet the legislative requirements of the STIP, which is SSTP, and nice acronym for State Strategic Transportation Plan, which focuses on safety, maintaining the traffic flow, improve reliability, improve congestion, improve the environment. So there's those criteria. Our projects primarily meet it. What would not meet it, greenways. This doesn't meet any of the criteria right there. But only 30% of the 55 million must meet those project requirements.
Councilman Hypes.
Yeah, there's been a few iterations and revisions. If you have a handout, I'd appreciate having what you're working from, just to make sure that.
Copy. I got 2.
Or if you can point me to the email date with the most recent one. Why am I not seeing it? Why was I not seeing it? It's not coming in, that's the reason. Just so you know, I'm not crazy.
It's blank on him.
This would explain why I didn't have it. Thank you, sir.
Councilman Binder.
When you were saying Greenway, does that also meant the Alpha Loop as well? So we're all.
Alpha Loop is currently being further investigated by our consultant Atkins.
So
There's a component, there's one of the 6 criteria is freight and improve economic development. And what we're trying to get confirmation of is it economic development associated with freight, or is it economic development? But also remember, as long as we hit 30% of the 55 million, we're fine.
So, and then my second question is just because it looks like we're trying to filter out things. Got a big list, and we know that, and it's good. But seeing how the T-SPLOST is 5 years, should we just look at the first 2 columns and say, okay, that's a good start? So then our tier 1 is definitely under 50, and then we grab a couple of our tier 2, or what would you suggest for us? What do you need from us moving forward, or any ideas of the rules of the game moving forward on this?
So the year 6+ related to projects that I saw, that State Route 9 was going to take a while to complete. So when we're looking at Cummings Street and some of the things that we're tying directly in, that's where I got put into that, like Lily Garden, different improvements like that. That doesn't mean things can't be broken into phases. So you could have Cummings Street improvements and starting at the eastern end at Westside Parkway, and move your way over and fund it for less dollars if you so desired to get us to Jane Ellen, and then focus on the other phases later on. So it's.
And just to clarify from Councilman Binder's question, so are you saying that if you only count the first 2 columns, then you may get to the next phases and not have money to finish it?
Well, what I was getting at is you could decide you just wanted to focus on, go for I would say, T-SPLOST 3, if that so happens, for the next one, and instead of biting out the whole apple, you bite it off in pieces. So you choose logical points of termini.
Okay. So you're taking a calculated risk.
Yes.
That it would be renewed and you'd have the money to complete the entire project.
You're doing that right now with Webbridge Road. So same exact example is we're stopping it at a clear point right at the Greenway, and then T-SPLOST 2, if you so desired, Mayor Council says on the priority list, that would then work your way further west.
Then my last one, just based on lessons learned. So if we just assume we use that to get to our tier 1, right? And then we have something as defined as tier 2s and tier 3, which is hopes and aspirational hopes, right? So, but we could, if we add the ones that we would like on our tier 2 and tier 3, can we? What's the final answer from that? Because I've heard other cities said no. If you want to move a tier 3 because of funding, let's say our tier 1 was we don't have enough funding to complete that, so we're going to grab from tier 3 or tier 2 to move that up to an executable project within this T-SPLOST program. Can we do that? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You do that with the bridges.
Yep.
You moved it up. You had a priority. It's a 5-year program, so things live, things change, and the way it's been interpreted for us is we make those adjustments.
And then what's our tier 3 looking at? Still like 70 million worth of projects?
It's just an additional, probably about $5 to $6 million worth of projects. Don't forget, you can also include milling and resurfacing. You can include debt consolidation. There's other, like we did in the first one, so you add additional dollars to it. And just because you put $100,000 for an item doesn't mean that you can't spend more than that or less than that.
And since you said you could include milling and resurfacing and bond, do we need them on the list? It seems like we did have those enumerated on the previous T-SPLOST list.
They were on the original, they were maintenance items. We could easily add those maintenance items as fillers or include it with us just as.
I would recommend if we want them on there, let's make sure we make that in the public document that we submit or whatever. just in case. Councilman Burnett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that I really like about the concept of T-SPLOST is that you can find 85% of the projects that nobody fundamentally disagrees with. And I don't mean us as a council, I mean residents in general, because they look at it and say, yeah, that makes sense. But when you see projects on here that have drawn arrows in the past, like Lily Garden, and the neighborhood in downtown comes out because that's their backyard, it is not a politically expedient decision to list something like that because the margin for this thing to pass is going to be razor thin anyway. If it even does, I don't want to take the opportunity from a political standpoint to kill this based on a precinct or a neighborhood or something like that, because it matters. And if that project is worth it down the road, then it's worth it down the road in a subsequent conversation. I also like the fact that there are pedestrian friendly, even though I shudder at the thought of spending $50,000 on a crosswalk for kids to go to school. It's not people in cars, but those are things that nobody fundamentally disagrees with. And I think that we have to whittle some of these. Hembry Road widening, $4 million. I think that is one you can whack because very few people that live here drive that road in any meaningful way that think it needs a turn lane or an expansion. And while, you may get written and you may get emails from people who live in other places, I don't think that that's something that moves the needle with people. I think the Alpha Loop moves things. I think sidewalks, pedestrian safety, are good, but I also think that there's definitely things in here that need to go because if it only passed 5248 last time countywide, there's not more people on the road right now, there's less. And so if you have to give them the best puncher's chance for this thing to pass, then you have to actually put those things in motion to do it. So and it's not that there's not plenty of projects on here that won't make a T-SPLOST list that we won't fund out of a mid-year budget, but I think you have to weigh the politics of this carefully because it's going to be close. Thank you.
And I will just say, your point is well taken, that it is something that has to be voted on by the public. And I made that point when I was talking to the commission and in the discussions last week when they were talking about adding T-SPLOST. It's a discussion for us to decide whether we want to put it on the ballot. But it's the voters that have to do it. So we have to be cognizant of the impact of the decisions we make in getting voter approval in November if it does go forward. Councilman Hypes.
We have the total numbers here. What was the target number you think that we need to get to work within?
You'll be at around 55 million.
55 million?
That'll be tier 1 and tier 2. Add another 5 million for tier 3 projects.
And the next question is, it sounds as though maybe we're going to put a few more things on the list before we start taking items off the list. An example being milling and resurfacing. If we're working within a top-end number of 55 million, before we know what we want to strike, we have to know the total of everything that's in. So are we putting other items onto the list?
You most definitely can.
Well, just to answer, I think what you were intimating in your question was, if we add milling and resurfacing and bond refunding to that, it makes it less like. I think the reason we included in the previous one was because we thought if there is a need to substitute some of those maintenance issues or problematic issues, then it gave us the flexibility to do so, not with the intention of actually getting 110% of the revenues that we are projecting and then being able to use it, but was to build in some flexibility. For example, if there were other projects that we wanted to fund and we could substitute money from bond payments or substitute money from milling and resurfacing to do so. Does that help you a little bit?
A little yes and no, and I can take this offline with you also, but I guess my question is, if we're going to try to whittle this down to a number and work through the process, taking into account various points of view, I just want to know what the dollar amount is in total, and I heard some items that weren't on the list, such as what you referred to. So I can take it offline with you, but I think that's fine.
Any other questions from council?
Just to piggyback on that, I do know that talking to the team that put together T-Splosh Tier 1 or T-Splosh 1 list, some of those items like milling resurfacing and debt reduction was the filler numbers to get us 85% of Tier 1, because not all of our projects added up to 85% of the value that we needed, and then the additional 15% for Tier 2. So some of it was just placeholders that weren't just set Tier 1 projects.
Councilman Burnett?
I agree with, I think I understand part of Councilmember Hypes' thought process. As you whittle that down, bond refunding, milling and resurfacing, I don't want to use this for either of those, and I hope that whatever subsequent council does either. But I would rather have and not need than need and not have. And I never thought there was a pandemic out there, and it turns out there's all kinds of things that happen in the Black Swan days, so I'd rather have access to it than to simply wonder how we were going to pave a road or a neighborhood. So, thank you.
So do you need more detailed feedback as far as what we want to whittle away tonight?
I would say we look at maybe we'll start with some of the larger dollar amounts. That's because if you just look at that first group of projects, that's
Tier 1, you mean?
I didn't even break them into tiers, but if you want to call on the first group of projects, Tier 1, it's $73 million total. 25 of the $73 million is just North Point Parkway. So if that's what we need to have, that's fine. If you want to break it down, take 25 down to 15 million, now you're at 63 million. You're 8 away.
So do you know where that $25 million came from?
It was an allocation. The cost estimate is much greater than $25 million right now.
And what's the total dollar figure?
Close to 40.
But we don't even have the design yet, do we?
We had a typical section that was done that had arbors 80 feet on center, light poles 65, 75 feet on center, that we just extrapolated off of, and we utilized Rucker Road as a base bid, added about 20%.
Rucker Road was only 15 million.
Yes, but Rucker Road did not have the creative elements as associated with North Point Parkway, as well as the 5G components with the arbors, as well as the in-road pavement technology, as well as the green infrastructure as required through that corridor as well. So there was several components that helped out that number going up.
And refresh my memory, for the first Tier 1 that we have to present, that number is 48 million?
I've got it right around 47.
47.
What's $1 million amongst friends?
Well, just to help us narrow this down, does anyone see anything in the two lower groups that they would like to move up? Councilman Biner? You mean the Hembry Road widening?
Yep, and Lily Garden to help reduce it.
Okay.
But again, if we look at T-Splosh as a 5-year project, I think we're there already with just using the first 2 columns.
Well, that's why I'm trying to get us so we can maybe eliminate some projects from that top tier altogether.
I think what Councilman Biner was going is take all the projects in years 0 through 5, and it totals $52 million. Is what he was, I think that's what you're referring to, right, Councilmember?
Well, on the first tier grouping that you got, right, 25, 26, and 21, so 27, 47?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, sir.
My only concern there, and I don't object to that if that's what council wants to do, but my concern there would be then you're counting on another extension to finish the Cummings Street corridor. I don't necessarily have any objection to doing the first two phases of North Point, and then if we have the money available in a renewal on that one. But on something like Cummings Street, I think we may want to.
Thought about that, and in the first two ones, they're basically for conceptual and engineering drawing, correct?
Year 03, are you referring to?
For Cummings Street, the 750,000?
Yes.
So I think we need to improve, like, you've done a good job, but start using these T-SPLOS as a cadence of saying, we gotta have things we're gonna execute on now, but then also know that this is, to your point, this is for a T-SPLOS 3, or this is for, because I think we're all for the improvements that we're talking about coming, so we gotta get started on it, so I've got no problem paying for conceptual engineering on it like it's shown, and then knowing that the funding's gonna have to come through a T-SPLOS 3 or a bond, or save our dollars over a lot of years.
Is that what council wants to do? Councilman Merkel?
Yeah, I thought we were already going to red line out the scramble intersection at Canton and Milton, that it was not supported. Didn't you state that at the retreat?
What was stated upon the
Traffic studies did not-
Traffic study did not say at the time it was
So
warranted
to me,
at
that's
the
just,
time.
I'd take that off right now, period. Let's move on. It's not an issue. I'm down there all the time. I don't see crosswalks. I don't see $100,000 needed to help people get across the street that they're already getting across without much problem. So if you're looking to line item things, to me, that's low-hanging fruit.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
On Cummings Street, I think that street has needed to be done long before we even paid it any attention. I would hate to see us block only a portion of that off with all the pedestrian traffic that's on there already that are having to navigate through the school block crossing and things like that. Maybe we don't do a roundabout on that, but I think that's a high priority as far as pedestrian traffic and safety. As far as North Point corridor, 25 million is a lot to spend when we can affect people's lives in other areas. And I don't mind doing that in a phase, but right now we have vehicular traffic going through North Point just fine. I know that's our long-range goal, and we need to spend some money there to get it moving. But 25 million is a different story. To me, we are to whack off a good portion of that. And pay for it as we go, because we're a long way from getting the development community to get on board, and I think that has to happen along and along. So,
And I'm sorry, which 25 million were you referring to?
On the North Point Parkway corridor,
So you're saying you don't want to...
the entire 25
Right.
million.
So Pete has it identified as 10 between 0 and 4 years. Are you comfortable with
I am more comfortable with that. Yes.
that? Yeah.
And Mayor Pro Tem, that's what everyone's looking at is
Okay.
the 25 million for 0-3 and 21 million 4-5 for that first grouping of projects is what's being looked at.
Right, so Mayor Pro Tem, I think what we're talking about now is the first two categories, the first two columns in the top section are approximately what we are projecting for Tier 1, $47 million roughly. And so the point I was asking about, I think is what you were talking about, is if you wanted to try to move the entire project of the Cummings Street corridor to be contained in that top tier, we'd have to cannibalize that 10 million from somewhere else. And so, I mean, I see some chunks that we might be able to get, a few from perhaps the Alpha Loop and rely on T-SPLOS 3 for some of that, but I don't see $10 million in there.
On that point, like, how long has it taken us to plan Kimball? How long has it taken us to plan Rucker, Webb Bridge? 5 years for you, that's plenty good for that section to have conceptual plans and
Kimball was conceptual and design and right away probably in 3 years. Altogether, through the bond. I mean, what's the challenging thing about Cumming Street is the right-of-way. A significant portion of Cumming Street is only a 40-foot right-of-way.
How much time do you think you would need if you got T-Splosh money to do a conceptual construction plans right away and get building on it?
If we're going to go all the way through the right-of-way phase, like purchasing the right-of-way, that's going to be the longest part of the project, which could be at least 1.5 to 2 years. And then design will take us approximately a little over a year because we're not doing anything out of the box. We're looking at basically doing a sidewalk project and adding left turn lanes where we can.
So how much, just like, to keep it going, like if we were going to fast track
probably
it?
another 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
But the only reason why it was pushed out was because of State Route 9. Because the State Route 9 project hasn't even started yet. It's probably looking at a 5-year project at a minimum in that area. So tying into there, because we can't we don't have the authority to go into the limits of disturbance. So one component where we could see a big chunk removed actually is trade winds. We're looking at about approximately $6 million worth of projects we would recommend for trade winds at the time instead of the full $10 million. That would be the roundabout at West Side and trade winds, the dual lefts from West Side, to Webb Bridge. Of course, that doesn't take place until after the bridge is constructed. Then looking at relocating the traffic signal from Morris to trade winds on North Point Parkway, because there isn't a traffic signal at North Point and trade winds now, and then closing off that intersection, that median break at Morris and North Point. It's about $6 million, all 4 of those projects together. And then I think we also included the shared through right from westbound Webb Bridge onto northbound Morris. So about $4 million from there could be taken.
Councilman Hypes.
First of all, a question. I see the mid-walk crosswalk for Manning's Oak is in the 6-year category. I don't recall why that is, as opposed to either 0 to 3 or 4 to 5.
The Manning Oaks.
Second line.
Oh, I think that was tying in more to what we were dealing with, the State Route 9 as well as the Cumming Street West Side and the trade winds ripple effect, figuring all that takes place. If you do, and it can be a standalone project, and it can be removed as well, because we also are looking at a roundabout on the Cumming Street corridor as well. So we didn't want to put it in years 0 to 3 and then find out at year 5, 6 that we were going to put a roundabout there and take it all out. So that was the reaction there. Was like we were going to go through the process, figure out what should be installed there. You wouldn't need a roundabout and a mid-block crosswalk is the short answer.
So following up on discussion points by others, if the Lily Jean second column money came out and the scramble came out, that's 185 that comes out. So we're a little less than 47 million. And again, we're presenting a list to be voted on. The ones that would be left in that have some legacy left to it would be the North Point corridor and the Cumming Street. And I guess my preference would be to not currently be held back by that 6-year column for those 2 items, but to press forward. I think part of selling this, if I was a voter, would be to accomplish some of these things.
And I will go on North Point Parkway. I think it's going to be a challenge to get to where we need to get, maybe to spend $5 million in years 3. I know design is going to be a while following the federal process, so that could be a challenge there as well.
So
I don't know if we'll be in right-of-way phase acquisition in 3 years.
So I think that's an excellent point, but related to that is I'm sort of in favor of projects that we undertake and push across the finish line and we can show accomplishment. So I'm not advocating this particular one, but say the Margene Way extension. If we can present it to the voters and then we can actually pour pavement and have cars running on it in 3 years, and then they get something in return for their T-Splost investment there. And then we can reevaluate where we've saved money along the way when we get past year 5. 6 years ago, I don't think, yes, we didn't have a city center 6 years ago. I mean, the city can be completely different 6 years from now. So we're going to be reevaluating on the fly with the things that we can accomplish without being held back by the things that we want to accomplish in the 6-year column. So I'm saying, I'm in support of what Councilman Binder was saying, to focus on these first 2 columns, and then we can reevaluate if you've saved money or if we hit some headwinds or if additional money comes into T-Splost. If it checks up short, it's a moot point anyway. But I would really like to see us finish some projects rather than not get projects finished because we hope to get into the 6-year column.
Oh, understood.
And I will just say, I think you make a great point. I'm a little more open now that I've listened and understand about narrowing it down there. I do think, though, that not just finishing projects, but you got to finish projects people care about, too.
I absolutely agree with that, yeah.
And that's one of my concerns when I look through here and see, okay, well, the ones that would be accomplished here aren't things that have tremendous amount of public support for, I think. So we need to give that some thought as well. But Councilwoman Richard?
Pete, just to back up, when you spoke about trade winds, you were saying that we've got 10 million in there, 5 and 5, and you're saying where you sit now with all the information that you're getting from the consultants that are working on that, it looks like it's only about a $6 million number?
We have the numbers larger than the improvements that we could implement are larger than 10 million. The low-hanging fruit or the biggest bang for your buck improvements are closer to the $6 million.
To the $6 million.
I mean, we showed roundabouts at Morris and Morris. We showed there was a lot of other improvements that we could do. We shortlisted it to the 4 or 5 critical ones for this exercise.
Okay, so if we needed to look at trying to consolidate it, it's something to consider.
Correct, yes.
That there's 4 million, potential 4 million there. And then the Hembry Road, which I think most of us are in agreement with as far as not being a project that our residents are focused on, that's another 4 million, right?
That was in the next group down.
Yeah, in the tier 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilman Merkel?
Just my last point on this, you mentioned having items on here that the public would get excited about and want to support. You got to keep in mind there's a couple items on here that might go the other way, that there are certain parts of the city that some don't see these as improvements and could be an adversary to promoting the bond itself. So just keep that in mind.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Thank you. The reason two of those projects, the smaller projects that I had asked Pete to leave on, was because one of them has some synergies where we could get the developer who's soon to build the building, we could get that done by the developer at some significant cost savings. But I also see the wisdom of waiting on those and paying for them out of our budget in the future once there's an education process that is ongoing as far as the public safety needs and also the grid system that's been in the city's planning for over a decade now. So that I would be fine with pulling two of those off. And I agree with Councilmember Hypes on the mid-block crosswalk for Manning Oaks. It's $125,000. It's an urgent need right now. If you've ever been stopped on that traffic at night where there's no lighting and people are trying to cross over and you have to have a police car, to me that's more important than spending an additional $5,000 on North Point right now. It's public safety. It's pedestrian safety. It's a big need right there. Thank you.
Councilwoman Richard?
Excuse me. When we had our workshop before Christmas, I thought there was a consensus to take the mid-block crosswalks, all of them, and just plan to fund them from the future budgets as opposed to putting them on T-Splost. Didn't we have that? I thought we had, no? Okay. I thought.
Councilman Burnett?
Crosswalks for children who go to school is not a bad thing to see on a ballot.
No, I understand.
Whether or not you fund them.
I agree.
Thank you.
I agree with their importance, but I thought that the understanding was when we looked at the 50,000, 25,000 here and there, that we all agree that we would make that a priority in our budget phase, as opposed to putting it off, this is not going to get passed for another year or so. So maybe that was a conversation I had with myself. And now.
I do remember us talking about bundling. I don't remember us agreeing to kick the can to the budget season. So, but I do remember us discussing bundling.
There were in the second block of projects, there were a couple in the second block that they all got moved up to the first block. That was a direction that we received.
Any other feedback? So where are we so far, Pete? Are we down to 47 million yet?
Just utilizing that first block of projects, year 0 to 5, you're right there.
So are we staying with the first two columns now?
I mean, the first two columns will get you right there at 46, 47 million for the first block. Then the second block will get you, we'll have to, for the 85%, or for the additional 15, and then another for tiers 2 and 3 would be we're there because you got rid of removing Henry Road. I can.
You can take the scramble out. I'll figure out another way.
Councilman Hypes.
I heard the discussion about Lily Garden and the scramble in Hembry Road. Was there discussion about leaving in or leaving out Margene Way extension specifically?
That was the second one I had in mind. I didn't specifically mention it, but it would be Lily Garden and Margene Way.
And is the discussion along the lines of that would be detrimental to a T-Splost list, or that would?
That was the impression I got, that this is something that we have to be ensured that the public supports and would willingly vote for.
I understand Councilman Mitchell's point about the future 100 North Main building and their contribution potentially. And I also understand the objections by the neighbors there. I have not heard, and maybe I'm out of the loop on this, objections on Margene Way from neighbors. Now, is there?
I think I haven't heard recent objections, but I know that in discussions with Pete about what that meant and what that looked like, residents in the several townhome developments right around that area have expressed concern.
And many of them did not realize it's from a 17-year-old master plan that we've been trying to implement over the years.
So I'd like to think about this one just a little bit differently. I'm not convinced it will alleviate school traffic, but unlike Lily Garden Way, Margene Way, the discussion has always been a connection point to address the forthcoming school traffic once the school opens up. And additionally, at a price tag of $1.7 million, you know, we might talk about paying out of the operating fund some of these other things, but I mean, that's a big chunk to take on out of the operating fund to do Margene Way. So I don't see it as the equivalent of Lilly Garden, because Lilly Garden isn't going to necessarily address that 7:30 in the morning crush at cars coming. But I don't know if it's going to be politically inexpedient or not. I don't have my pulse on that particular one.
Councilman Merkel?
The only thing I would add to that is that Margene Way is going to be the primary parking for that log cabin park. If we don't put Margene Way in, that park needs to be redesigned for parking, because there is none. There's not sufficient parking. The numbers used to put that park and to pass that was based on using the spaces on the street to get to the number of parking spaces we needed.
Councilman Burnett?
The only thing I would say is this is not like the last roads infrastructure list any of us are ever going to see or have the opportunity to send to a voter, but it will be the most narrow margined one that goes out there. And the last time that the city put a bond that was adjacent to the impending T-Splost, I think it got almost 80% of the vote. So sometimes the timing of what you choose to do matters more than the projects you select. So I'd offer that too. Thank you.
Councilman Heights?
Well, I think this is a worthy discussion about what benefits the city most and what I think the city expects of us. But there may be some not in my backyard people on Margene Way, and I know two people who live on Margene Way, and they may feel strongly not in my backyard, but there may be a host of other residents in the immediate area who will appreciate the relief of traffic congestion if in fact this provides that relief. You know, the way to that high school right now, obviously, is coming in from the west or coming through downtown. And those are your options.
In the interest of speeding this process along, may I make a suggestion? This is a workshop. I think we've got pretty good clarity other than one or two points that haven't been ironed out. Pete, if you could work towards putting up an item as been presented, including things that may have been questionable, including those first two columns. That'll give us some time to talk out the details on perhaps Margene Way and anything else that wasn't really clear to you. And then when it comes as a business item, we can take a vote on it one way or the other.
We could always do another workshop, as Bob mentioned. We've got till June to finalize.
If we have to.
Yes, I understand.
I mean, honestly, we're so close, I don't know that we need another workshop, perhaps. I mean, I think we're close enough where we can continue to have these conversations amongst ourselves to see if we have a priority, and then we can come in with a business item, and we'll discuss it publicly and vote one way or the other. Unless anybody has any objections. Councilwoman Richard?
Thank you. So assuming that we'll get to a list shortly, the next step as far as we vote on it, and then my question is, what does this look like when we go to the public as far as the list, and how do we communicate to the public, and how do we solicit feedback and that type of thing?
There is a process. We have to have public meetings to go through the list. That will occur between now and should be June, the latest. You could meet before. We could have it. We condense it to do it like just in March or April, depending on when council wants to vote on the final list. Have the public meeting, get the input, see what's going on, gives us time for mayor and council to modify the list if need be, modify dollars if needs be, because that's another component that we're going to be working with Atkins, our consultant, on, is making sure these numbers jive to today's dollars and put a little escalation in there for those that may take place a little further years down the road, so we have some cover. And then final vote will occur, and then you guys will pass it off onto, I think there's an IGA, then that must be executed as well. So there's a vote in June, the latest in June, an IGA in July, and by August 2nd, the county is moving forward to have it on the ballot.
On the ballot.
We actually, right now, we're contemplating, and these are rough numbers or rough timelines. We were planning the full press public engagement process May 4th through 28th. We'll build out web pages for each of the projects so that we can educate the public on that. Those would stand through the entire voting process. And then we can add to that in-person public meetings. Depending on where we are with COVID numbers, we can start to look at, workshops across the hall, things like that. So we've started to kind of put together a framework for a campaign, but we have to finalize it based on, Aaron and Sam were talking about the final schedule. So based on that, these dates may shift a little bit.
Okay.
And Atkins has a virtual meeting tool that they have that James and I got to see for the first time today. So we're going to start looking at that and see how that could benefit and move the process along.
Okay, great.
Any other questions from council? All right, Pete, thanks, sir.
You got it.
So the next workshop is for the preliminary list of parks projects to possible bond issue. Mr. Regis, did you want to do an introduction on this one as well?
Yes, Mayor, Council, pretty much the same thing happens here. Tonight, Morgan will talk to you about possible park bond projects. And then Aaron has the calendar, like from here until July, when, if everything goes forward, when Sam would be reading the ordinances that we would then get to the county. So Morgan is up. Morgan?
Thank you, Bob. And just so you'll know, I am beginning to lose my voice. So if you can't understand me, or it sounds like I'm mumbling, I'm not. So just let me know and I'll try to do better. I bring tonight the list of possible bond referendum items this is the same list that you saw at the retreat with the items that were identified as maintenance taken away. And so now we're looking at a total of a $28,500,000 list. To take you through them real quick. Oops, wrong one. Hang on just a second. So on that list, there's the second thing on the list is the one that I've pulled up first. It's the Wills Park Master Plan project. This is to basically build out Wills Park according to the master plan that was approved by Mayor and Council about 2 years ago. So this does not include the equestrian center. This is basically the gateways in the park and improving the overall park with the exception of the equestrian center. This was again outlined in the master plan that we did, and then we did a master plan for Wills Park itself, and this was what we got. The second thing on the list that I'll call your attention to is the Wills Park Equestrian renovation build-out. This is specifically for the Wills Park Equestrian Center. Again, we have attributed $5 million for this build-out. That is, again, per the master plan estimate that was done. But I would call your attention that it actually is a $10 million project. This would be $5 million that the city would put in that would have to be matched by the Wills Park Equestrian Foundation in order for that to happen. This is the same group that is building the ring that is the new ring that sits right there. If you can see my little, see that? That is the one that is under construction. The city funded that at $250,000, and the foundation has funded it with $250,000. We're hoping to be, we're in the final stages of that plan being approved, and we're going to go out to bid hopefully very soon. So The third thing, as we move down the list, I'll pull up this map that basically shows you, let's see if I can get a bigger picture of that without losing it. Yeah. So the next 6 items are development items, and we'll start on the far west, and work our way back. We have Old Rucker Park, which is you see that on the map. We have a design, but we have not taken that design to the public yet. We were getting ready to have a series of public meetings just as COVID hit. We are now working with Amanda and her team and putting together that public input. So we'll be bringing a plan to move forward. And that is basically to build out that park except for the farm. We dedicated the area for the farm as part of that 12 acres. And so we're talking about the remaining part of that park. Moving to the east, you go up a little north and you find Mid-Broadwell Park. Mid-Broadwell Park, you'll see that has a price tag of $500,000. We've done a good bit of work already at Mid-Broadwell. We've done some of the infrastructure. In fact, if you've been by since Friday, you'll notice that there is actually a restroom building now at Mid-Broadwell Park. Can't be used yet because we still haven't hooked up all the pipes, but it can be used. So that would be, again, develop out that park, very similar, very similar to the way that Windward Community Park is, a park for the community that you can walk to and use. So moving again, continuing our journey east, we find Milton Avenue Park. That is the park right across from the Innovation High School where the log cabin is. Again, we have development money. We've earmarked $2 million for the planning and the development of that park there in downtown Alpharetta. It's very similar to what we did at Old Rucker. The mayor and council designated the spot for the cabin, but made no other commitments around for what that park's going to look like until we get public input. Again, continuing on our journey east, we cross over 400 on Old Milton, and to the left you find what we have designated as Heritage Park. It's the farmhouse settlement, which was the first settlement for Alpharetta. And we've designated $3 million for the design and build out of that. Reason this one is a little bit higher than the others, it's a little bit tougher terrain than any of the other parks, and it's going to be a little bit tougher. It also has the historic component that we've got to pay attention to. And then as we're going west, we look up at Union Hill Park. We know that the Greenway is coming in, the Greenway extension is going to end there at Union Hill. And we've designated, again, $2 million for that part to be redeveloped. We have to redesign it and redevelop Union Hill Park as well. And then the last thing on the development is at Webb Bridge Park. The large soccer fields now, we call them the upper fields. We would like to turf those fields so that they become very playable. In the situation where we had last year, where we had a lot of rain, we lost about 60% of the practices and games at Webb Bridge. Webb Bridge is our main soccer facility, so if you lose 60% of your practices and games on one facility, it really hurts your scheduling. So this would allow us, the $1 million would allow us to make that a very playable facility there, so we could play, whether it's right after it quits raining, we could start playing soccer again there, and that would be a nice complement of the artificial turf that we have there at Webb Bridge for the soccer field already. The last two things on my list are parkland acquisitions, and we have put a marker there for $3 million for parks along the Alpha Loop and $5 million for additional parkland. So that's as quickly with my present voice that I could run through the items that I have on the list. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Councilman Markle.
Yeah, Director. We got some parks that we acquired 4 and 5 years ago, park land, it's not on the list. You don't have Kimball Bridge and Waters Road listed, and I know there's going to be some improvements provided by the contractor at some point, but right now, there's nothing to connect that. And then, fairly new to me on my radar is the Brookside Park. That's how big is that?
Brookside Park is 25 acres.
We've got a 25-acre park sitting behind some office buildings that I've been in office 6 years, didn't know we had. Now, call me whatever you want to call me, but I'm pretty sure my neighbors don't know it's there either. So I'd like to see some focus in some of those areas.
Okay.
Where we chisel away at, I don't know, but I think we need to go in order. You know, Councilman Binder was a big part of Parks and Rec when all these acquisitions were going on, identifying these places. The understanding was we would allocate the money in the prior bond to purchase it, and the next round we would activate them and figure out what that activation means. So I know farmhouse is important. I'm not belittling it in any ways, but for it to jump up in line at $3 million when it's still not going to be accessible by the Greenway or connecting neighborhoods, maybe rethink some of those numbers. Please.
Councilman Burnett.
Something that I have thought of as I've driven past the joint venture with Milton and Alpharetta at least 5,000 times, and it's never seen any progress. I would like for us to consider taking, if it was whittling it down or growing the size a little bit, to try to buy Milton out, because we're in the business of doing stuff. And I think it's a beautiful piece of property, and I would love to be in control of it, because it wouldn't take much to make that a really special place for people on the west side, to complement Merkel's Waters Road idea. Thank you.
Well, I haven't seen anybody else raise their hands, so I'll go ahead and speak up, but I assume we'll all get to talk. The one thing that struck me as I looked at the package here, and I looked at it, going back to the discussion we had kind of with T-Splost, is it's got to be approved by voters. And I've been fortunate to be supportive of past 2 bond issues, and a lot of thought was put into making it attractive to all parts of the city. And so when I run the numbers here, we've already, just in big picture, you know, since 2012, we've spent a tremendous amount of money creating the vibrancy, the walkability, and the park spaces on the west side of town. I mean, we built City Center with a bond, and we've done other park investments. We got 5 acres back here that didn't used to exist. We've acquired a tremendous amount of properties all over and are functioning at some level or not. So when I look through this list and I add up the investments that would be spent on the west side of Georgia 400, it came to $17.5 million out of the 28. And there were $6 million on the east side of 400, and $3 million of that was for the farmhouse, that while it is historic and it is something we need to preserve, it's going to be a part between the QT parking lot and the sound barrier wall of Georgia 400, and it's not accessible to neighborhoods. So I think we really need to go back and take a look. And I talked to Director Rogers about this in the past. I appreciate his list and his priorities, and I don't disagree that they may be priorities. But I think we need to be really thoughtful about, and going back to Councilman Merkel's, how do we get the biggest bang for the buck in every area? If you look at the map that he had, there was no investment south of Old Milton Parkway, period. There was nothing on either side of 400 south of Old Milton Parkway. And so we've got 25 acres there at Brookside Park in one of our most challenged office developments right now that could be a gem if we'd invest in that. If you haven't been down there, I don't blame Councilman Merkel for not knowing it was there. I was the liaison for Parks and Rec for about 3 years before Director Perry took me down there and showed me it's got a pond. It backs up to those office parks across from North Point Church and Georgia State University and things like that. I think that's it. Also, the challenge there that nobody knows, we don't have any parking there. So it's basically accessed by the Brookside Park office building. You park there and you can walk down this line zigzag mile-long ramp because it's accessible to wheelchairs. And there's no connection to the other side of the greenway because the creek's between the greenway and the park. So if we could add a bridge, activate that thing, it could be a jewel. I think that would be a good area to look at leveraging the best bang for the buck. And I know we're talking about doing things on the North Point corridor. I think some investments along there, whether it's in space that we've already got or investing in parks in cooperation with Trademark, the new owners of the mall. I think we need to take a look at maybe diversifying geographically and where we can, we've got two goals with our parks now. Parks are an amenities to help revive office parks and retail. And so while I don't disagree with doing any of the stuff on this list, I think we've only got so much money and money's really short right now. So I think we need to be thoughtful about where we get the biggest bang for the buck. Councilman Binder.
I completely agree with what you're saying, and I'd like to see some added to make sure it matches geographically. One big thing that I kept seeing was parkland along Alpha Loop, which it sounds well and good, but I think maybe if we brought in some of that to say within our trail system would make more sense. I think again, and I hope we start investing in North Point. I know we talked about in T-Splosh here because we've done plenty of damn conceptual plans for it. So I'm all for putting money in there, but Kathy's conceptual plan on that talked about parkland along North Point Parkway, so working with the developers there on that. And so I would like to see that, and where we can broaden it in the definition, because Alpha Loop's great. It's good for the citizens around here and for the business around here, but I think more of our residents live outside of the Alpha Loop, area. So, and we want to start attracting them to North Point. So where we can broaden, that'd be great.
And just to make that point, part of the consideration was, for me, looking at the parkland along the Alpha Loop here was, well, we've got $9 million earmarked for T-Splosh funds in the Alpha Loop already. So there might be a little overlap on that. Councilman Hypes.
Just a couple of observations. One about Brookside. My office for 9 years overlooked the pond. I was on the back side of Brookside too. Dan had, Councilman Merkel had been over there. I don't know if anybody else was. But, that's a favorite area of dog walkers. But it's like only the dog owners that knew about it would be over there with their dogs. And so I think it's as much of a marketing and signage issue as anything, because I don't know who's taking care of that. If our Parks Department is mowing back there around the pond with the paved trail around it, but it's been a few years since my office was over there, but it was always in pristine condition. So the pond back there at Brookside. So and for 9 years I was looking at it. I didn't know it was a city park. I thought it was part of Brookside. And on park acquisitions, I think we, get the best player available and not worry about the position, so to speak. Get the best athlete, get the best park available if it comes along and maximizes our bang for our buck. Having said that, the Beltline has done an amazing transformation of Atlanta. And so any land that we do control along our Alpha Loop is going to be to our great benefit down the road. There are people just left and right along the Beltline seeking to develop along the Beltline. So what we control now at 2021 prices or whatever will be to the great benefit of the city, 20 years from now. And I think primarily of a lot of that ground that's out there between Old Milton going down to Village Tavern, because I think the Beltline, the things I've seen on the Beltline and projecting that to our Greenway Alpha Loop system, there could be amazing possibilities. It just takes a few key restaurants to build right up against the Alpha Loop to take advantage of that. But that's it.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Thank you. As far as farmhouse, I wouldn't mind seeing that go down a little bit, but to eliminate it entirely, I think is a big mistake, especially if you want to appeal to a broader voting base. We've been talking about it for years. It's been on the thing even before we acquired the new parks. This has been a discussion point that many citizens are well aware of. So I wouldn't eliminate that myself, and I would actually reduce the parkland acquisition if we want to bring on Brookside and we want to bring on the other off Waters Road. I agree that those need attention. I know Brookside, you can't even access it or have parking hardly to it, and there's no access to that. But farmhouse can easily be connected. Pete has shown us where it could be connected to the Greenway. And it's a beautiful part with the stream and things like that too. So just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Councilman Richard?
Your point about nothing south of Old Milton, can we see that map again?
Absolutely.
I think that's a really valid point. And yeah, I would like us to see a little bit more of a balance, east, west, north, south. I think, as you said, Brookside, Office Park, trying to activate that. It's an amenity for offices, and that's becoming more and more attractive as folks are trying to get back into the office. I think there's value there. I don't know what that number looks like. I mean, I personally didn't even know it was our city park either. So I'd like to see a little bit more around what that looks like. But I would also
Just to interrupt you for a second, I believe Ms. Cook already has money in the mid-year budget for studying Brookside Park.
Yes. Well, I just meant from a park perspective from Morgan. I'm just curious about, he knows what's out there right now. I don't know if it's, a $15 million project or if it's a couple of million,
Right.
just to kind of throw some.
And we don't have those plans yet. I know in conversations with Kathy and Director Rogers last week, one of the challenges is that it is mostly floodplain, so we have to do a lot of drainage improvements. That's one of the reasons that the maintenance is difficult, because when we have these big storms, a lot of that area floods, and then it doesn't drain that quickly because it wasn't designed to drain very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So there would have to be some designs and things like that. We'd have to put together some kind of master plan and get a WAG together to come up with a real number. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's helpful. But as far as the west side goes, my priorities would be to execute on the Wills Park master plan. This is a plan that our citizens supported several years ago, right? I mean, this is not a new plan. So I think that from a bond perspective, we need to show some progress and be able to demonstrate some moving forward with the plan. And I think the equestrian $5 million investment there, it makes perfect sense. I mean, we're getting equal support from the equestrian foundation as well. So from the west side, I would like to, I think those two are really important for Wills Park. But I do think we need to kind of spread the love a little bit out with some of these other smaller park type things, including the Heritage Park.
Okay. Director Rogers, what do you think?
I think I've got some good direction. I'd love an opportunity to take all of this, see if I can't mold it into something and bring it back. I don't know if we can need to do a second workshop or where
I think this one may need a second workshop. Does council agree?
I would certainly like.
If we were a lot closer, I wouldn't want to have to do another workshop.
No. I am in favor of a second workshop, having heard the comments here tonight.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. It's a good start.
Thank you.
It's good. So that'll wrap up the workshop.
And Mayor
on the-
Gillivan, just briefly, I just wanted to provide an overview of the timetable for the bond to get it on the ballot.
Oh,
for
thank you.
November.
I'd completely forgotten about that.
And it was kind of just going to go off of what Morgan said about having another workshop. In the packet, the timetable that you'll see, that looks like this. This is pretty much an accumulation of the deadlines from Fulton County, the Secretary of State's office, and our internal procedures in order to get the bond on the ballot for November. So we're looking at February, March, and April. We can have workshops to discuss the preliminary list of projects. In April, we'll be bringing forward the IGA and resolution to authorize Fulton County to provide election services, which we would be doing anyways because we're in an election year. So in May, we're looking to have that finalized list, to bring forward as a new business item in order to receive some input from the public. June, we're looking at to have the finalized list, and then we can adopt the ordinance. In August, we'll need to provide the final verbiage for the ballot.
Thank you. And this question is for either you or Sam. Sam or Aaron, at what point is it, because I know once we reach a certain stage, City Council is not allowed to advocate for a bond issue. When does that begin?
Yeah, I may have to ask Sam. I'm not sure if there's an indefinite date on that.
Generally, and I guess it depends on advocacy, but education is always permitted. But the rules really don't necessarily kick in until you call for the election, and then at that point, you can't spend city money advocating for it. So if we call, the official call will be when it.
October 3rd?
It's actually sooner than that. Let me look at your list, Aaron. I remember
Sure.
seeing it.
Just wanted to point out that typically a bond issue is promoted by an independent committee.
That would be the outside date, but yeah, it's not later than October 3rd.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to get that kind of timeline in my head as well. Anything else, Ms. Cobb?
That's it.
Thank you.
Mayor, back on that point,
Councilman
though,
Binder.
advocating for the bond is different than educating on the projects, right? And he's saying
Absolutely.
always allowed on.
Absolutely. I mean, we'll continue to inform the public.
Perfect.
We're just not supposed to go out and campaign on it, nor spend public money campaigning for it. So if there were going to be mailers or flyers or ads or anything like that, it would have to be done from the private sector. Thanks, sir. All right. That'll wrap up the discussion of the workshop on the park bond issue and move on to the town green turf options. Director Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the retreat, we were asked to put this on the item, on the workshop item. We had a couple of samples out before the meeting. We're bringing them in now, so you can take a look at them. I will tell you a couple of things about these samples. Is at the end, this is a particular product. This is not the product that we're necessarily going to buy. These are just two samples of possible products. The reason we brought these is because they have the different size nap. And the nap is basically what you see. The green is what you see is called nap, and the carpet is called nap. It has different heights. The one to your right has a higher nap, and then the one on the left has a lower. When it is installed, there will be sand put in both of these, which will give it a real feel like a real turf. And it also will be much more absorbent to liquids in the rain and other things. So these are really the decision. The decision is, I think, is what we're looking for is, number one, are we going to turf town green? And if we are, do you like the larger nap or the shorter nap? Because we've got to have that in order to put the bid together. So we will, and really those are your two options. The third option is more like what I call the Home Depot turf, where it's on the big rolls. You go see it. That would be the third option, and nobody wants that. So these are the two. We just got to basically decide if we're going to move forward, what we're going to put in that bid.
Councilman Merkel?
Pretty familiar with everybody's resume up here, and I don't think anybody includes turf management. What do the professionals say?
Well, again,
because I don't prefer one over the other. I mean, we want what's most. I want whatever the professionals say will serve our needs the best.
Who we've been relying heavily on is the gentleman that installed, the company that has installed the turf at Webbridge and at North Park. The last two, they've won both bids for the last two, so we've been using him as a resource. He basically says it depends on the one on the right is going to make you feel more like grass. He said if you're going to just put it in there and you just want people to think it's grass, then go with the longer nap. He said, but the shorter nap is easier to take care of if you have a lot of dogs that are going to be on that, because dogs are going to do what dogs do. The number one and the number two, if I have to be very specific. Both of those are easier to take care of with the shorter nap, simply because there's just not as much that you have to do. So it kind of depends on, which way you want to go.
Well, this goes back in your court again, because you're going to be maintaining it.
Yeah.
I think of people of all ages are out there, a lot of young kids. I'm talking knee high. And I got to wonder if maybe the shorter is easier for them to get around. But I'm looking to a professional to tell me what to put in, not my opinion.
Yeah. So according to our expert, the one with the longer nap is the one we should put in city green. We still are going to have to take care of it. Somebody's still going to have to go out to city green, just like we do now. We have to go out there every day and make sure they're eating food on the green. We make sure there's not dog poop on the green. And so we're going to have to do that with this as well. If you ask him and if you ask me, we want the experience of our citizens. You're going to get the better experience with the longer nap. It's going to look more realistic, and that would be what. If you were asking for a recommendation, because I really thought it was going to go the other way, y'all going to make a recommendation. But if you were looking for a recommendation, I would say go with the longer nap, because it's what people expect to see at a town green.
Councilman Burnett?
I always like that you bring the heavy-hitting stuff. And I've been team grass for a long time, and I'm officially flip-flopping. I don't know if either of those resemble what is out at Webbridge, or if that's just an entirely different product. But I practice on it every Friday night for soccer, and it is real nice.
Yeah.
So whatever closest resembles that.
These samples came from the same company that put that out there. It is a different product, because an athletic turf field is different than a social use for the turf. It's just the difference between shag carpet and short nap carpet. So yeah, it's the same, but it's different. Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
Just my opinion, I like the longer turf. It looks better, it feels better. The dye is more realistic. This one looks like it's been dyed for a purpose. I'm sorry, on my right, your left.
The longer.
This one, yes, the one directly right next to you. It just looks better. But I have seen some that have a little bit more brown in it that resembles more realistic grass. But that's about as, excuse me. Huh?
The sand will bring more of the brown out too.
Okay.
It will.
All right. But I think that's heading in the right direction. Thank you.
Is there a difference in cost?
No, there's not.
Okay. Councilman Heights?
Based on your recommendation and just the appearance, I would prefer the one on my right, and we had a chance to walk on it out there in the rotunda. And I think the appearance of it is paramount because of that's the picture. Everybody who comes to town, they take that picture. And so I think the one on the left in the shorter nap looks like artificial grass, and the one on the right might fool you a little bit.
I'm for the right.
Councilman Richard votes for the right. Okay. Councilman Binder, any preference?
I trust Morgan, and I hope this council can move on to bigger and better things.
And unless anybody has any other comments, I think we can wrap this up.
Thank
All
you.
right, Morgan. Thank you. I appreciate your
I
effort.
certainly have clear direction on that.
I didn't know they even had turf that you could put real sand on. I'm impressed. So we'll wrap up the Town Green Turf Option Workshop and move on to the operation update. COVID-19 and municipal operations. Mr. Regas?
Mayor and Council, I was going to ask James to make this presentation. He put together the report, did a great job on it. This was an agenda item actually that was going to be at the retreat. Councilwoman Richard asked for it, and then she was nice enough to push it back 1 week. So, James.
Sure.
I'll try to keep this short. I wasn't prepared to make this presentation. So the document that we've prepared for you basically tries to set out the landscape in the community, the current landscape within the organization, and then provide kind of some direction looking to the future. Just to kind of catch you up on some basics, our numbers have been on a rapid decline following the expected holiday peak. We peaked on January 22nd with an incidence rate of about 920 per 100,000 people. At that point, we were among the highest in Fulton County. As of Friday, and this number is not reflected in here, this report was written before that. As of Friday, our number was 341.8 per 100,000, and we were the lowest in Fulton County as far as our incident rate. Why is that important? The magic number is 100 per 100,000 incident rate. You want to maintain that for 2 weeks. Once you do that, it starts to trigger some things. That's when we start to be able to loosen up a little bit on how we handle meetings, public meetings. It starts to allow us to do some things with respect to certain types of events, not necessarily all events. I mean, obviously, we wouldn't want to have the Taste of Alpharetta at 100 per 100,000. Wouldn't be that great an idea. But some smaller events start to be possible because we can still maintain some distancing. Mask wearing still goes on, things like that. But you start to be able to turn that next corner. So that's why that is kind of a critical number and why you'll see it reflected throughout this report. A couple of key factors that will influence what comes next and how the decline continues. One is obviously the behavior of the public. You know, if we continue to follow the guidance and the protocols while we wait for more people to become vaccinated, that number should continue to decline. The variable that we're not sure how it will play a part is the two newer strains of the virus that they are active in Georgia. They are more contagious. So that could slow the decline, but we anticipate the decline to continue. Currently, we are in stage or phase 1A plus of the rollout of the vaccine. While our numbers there are looking better, we have at this point seen about 1 million eligible Georgians across the state vaccinated. There are over 2 million individuals in Georgia who qualify in Group 1A plus. The biggest sticking point for the vaccination rollout, while admittedly there have been some issues with appointment systems and things of that nature, the biggest factor continues to be availability of vaccine doses. Currently, there are 154,000 doses available per week across the entire state. So, we have seen some health departments put a pause on new appointments. There is a pause in effect now in Fulton County and in many other counties across the state because a new statewide appointment system is being ramped up. It's scheduled to launch this Sunday, I believe it is, the 21st. That is anticipated to have a big impact on the ability of individuals to make appointments. In the interim, Fulton County will be taking those folks who are currently on the waiting list, and there's between 27,000, 28,000 individuals on that waiting list. They will get appointments set up for those folks. It doesn't mean that the appointments will be between now and the 21st by any means, but it does mean that they will have their first appointments set before the new system goes into effect. That's Fulton County's plan. Organizationally, between March 1st and November 30, right when we were in rollout, only 15 employees were diagnosed as positive with COVID-19. Another 59 employees had to be quarantined during that period because of possible exposure, most of which did not occur here. But between December 1st and February 3rd, that same post-holiday peak that impacted the general population, it hit us here as well. So during that period, we had another 50 employees contract COVID-19, and another 47 had to be quarantined due to exposure. Now, something to keep in mind is that those numbers of the individuals who've quarantined are not necessarily all-inclusive. There may be individuals who they quarantined because of possible exposure, but because of the job functions they perform, they could continue to work at home. Therefore, they don't fall into the quarantine bucket. We use I'm forgetting the acronym off the top of my head, but FFCRA. Yes, thank you, Chris. The FFCRA federal program to determine who is using FFCRA hours, which is kind of an extension of federal program. Let's see. Between March 1st and February 3rd, we had 10,202 hours of leave under the FFCRA. 1,918 of those have been used since December 1st. So we saw more quarantine activity in terms of duration of quarantine prior. The quarantine since have been shorter, but there have been more of them. So again, it kind of mirrors what we're seeing out in the public. So currently, our current guidelines, I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds of that. You can see those for yourself. But we're currently still operating in phase 4 of our original plan. Phase 4 is basically normal operations with continued social distancing and certain safety protocols. We do still encourage remote meetings as much as possible rather than having people in smaller conference rooms. things of that nature. And of course, we are still refraining from having any type of activity that would encourage gatherings of groups of 50 or more so that we maintain consistency with the governor's protocols. Now, returning to normal operations, again, that's going to be triggered by hitting that 100 per 100,000 incidence rate for 2 consecutive weeks and maintaining it, right? Because our plan is built around the idea that we can go up, we can go down as conditions warrant and as it's safe to do so. Or if safety says, we got to back up, then we back up. So once that condition has hit, we'd enter phase 5. That would be largely equivalent to business as usual, but before the pandemic, the city would return to full on-site staffing. We do still have, I believe it's 75 employees that at one point or another during the week may be working remotely. So we would bring pretty much all of those back. The necessity for most enhanced safety protocols, such as a 6-foot distancing rule, and equipment like plexiglass barriers, face mask coverings, or latex gloves would be gradually phased out. Doesn't mean, hey, we hit 100 per 100,000 in 2 weeks, boom, masks off everybody, and let's give each other a big hug. It's not going to happen. Sanitizing of hands and office surfaces, that's probably here to stay permanently. Always be cleaner, right? We did introduce a number of tools during our response to COVID-19 that we think will continue to be used. We do think that there is a convenience factor in some instances for remote support for meetings. We'll continue that. We do think that there have been some enhancements to the ability for citizens to do some applications online, submit plans online, and even some enhancements have been made to our abilities to take online payments. Those will remain. Those are benefits to our customers and our citizens, and some of them were in fact things that we had planned to do. COVID accelerated it. It made it necessary to move faster. We'll also continue new public engagement tools that we've seen, that we've put in place. That can be some of the creative measures that we've seen community development use in systems like Typeform and Mentimeter, online survey tools, things like that. And of course, the ability for people to watch more of our sessions online. So those things, again, make it easier for the public to engage with their government. And we think that those are benefits, and we want to continue them. In terms of internal infrastructure, the move towards cloud computing solutions, they'll have long-term benefits to how we operate. But to realize the full benefit of those changes and better support operational continuity in the face of future incidents, the future refresh of departmental computers will need to place an emphasis on laptops and mobile devices so that if we do have to go into a more remote environment, it's easier for us to support that. Community development, again, not to pick on Kathy, but, well, I always pick on Kathy, so no new change there. Community development found some of their ability to support remote work limited because they were tied to desktops. There was a time when that made sense because the cost difference between a desktop and a laptop was so big. Doesn't exist anymore. So that focus on the ability to work from anywhere will continue here just as it has in the private sector. Finally, we have to recognize that the city will need to continue to carefully assess the community landscape over the next 12 plus months. We don't yet know what the full impacts long-term will be in terms of how people work and what that means to the local economy. We have to recognize that we are a huge office market, the second largest in Metro Atlanta. We know that some of the folks and some of the companies that have placed an emphasis on remote work will continue to do that. Maybe not to the degree that they do now, but it's going to have implications. That, in turn, will have implications to traffic patterns. It will have implications to, well, we know there'll be, we've seen implications to the way people use our parks, our sidewalks. Are those changes that are here to stay? Or will those kind of snap back to where they were prior, or somewhere in between? So this next 12-month period, we're going to have to do a lot of assessing of exactly what's going on there. We're going to have to pay very close attention to what's happening in our community, because we need to skate to where the puck is, not where it is, not where it was. And that's going to be a challenge. But it's one that we feel we're up to. And making that call as to what is short-lived and what is long-term. So I'm glad to try to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Councilwoman Richard?
Thank you. Just a comment and a question. Thank you for this, much more detail than I had expected, so I appreciate you taking the time to put it all together for us. And this is maybe a James question, but obviously spring is coming, special events are coming. Based on the governor's guidance there as far as the infection rate and so forth in 2 consecutive weeks, what are we looking at there?
So Morgan actually will be speaking about that in a few moments.
Okay.
And I would prefer to leave it to our experts in the field of special events. I know Amanda's here to assist with that as well.
That was my question. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the work put in over the last 11 months with this.
Thank you.
So that'll wrap up the operational update, and we'll move on to City Special Events Management. Director Rogers?
No, it will be. I might not need it. Let's see what happens. So thank you. Uncharacteristically, I got something I want to read. Normally I try to read to know the subject well enough where I can talk, but for this one, I'd like to read this because the one thing that COVID has done is give us an opportunity to hit the pause button with events, and we've really been looking at how we've done events. So if I can get through my presentation, and then I'll be glad to answer any questions, because I think some of the questions will be answered in some of the later parts. It looks like a lot, but it's big, so I can read it real easy, so it won't take me but a second. So it's been a tough year for events. During the last year, we have had some events that met the governor's public health emergency criteria, and also practiced COVID protocols such as the farmers market, certain equestrian events, the athletic games and tournaments, and events such as the Drive-By Santa. But those events have been few and far between. As we look toward 2021, none of us know when the events will return and under what requirements. Therefore, we would like to recommend a way to determine when events greater than 50 would be allowed. And it's basically building on what James has says, is starting with the governor's emergency order. Staff connected the dots utilizing the definitions of the order and explanations within the order, and came with this method. All future events would use the threshold requirement as outlined in the governor's order, which requires that the COVID incident rate per 100,000 for Alpharetta as determined and published twice weekly be below 100 for us to have for us to approve events. And then that we could approve an event, but then we could postpone an event if that number goes back up. What this would allow folks to do that are wanting to know whether they can have events, they can start planning it with that understanding. Good example is Rotary wanting to know whether they can do the Memorial Day tribute at Brook Street. They got to start planning it if they're going to even have a shot at doing it in Memorial Day. So this, they could plan it, but knowing that if the numbers aren't there, it won't happen. So specifically, here's the recommendations for our 2021 city events. First, we want to cancel Taste of Alpharetta for 2021. There's just not enough time for to wait for the numbers to come down. Planning should have already happened. We're late with this, so we want to go ahead and officially cancel the Taste of Alpharetta, and the sooner that we can officially do that, the better. Food Truck Alley will be retired. We had kind of talked about that in the past because Food Truck Alley was made to bring people downtown. Now there are people downtown, and when we bring those food trucks in, we're basically competing with our restaurants. So we would like to retire Food Truck Alley. We also want to cancel the Art Street Fest on Memorial Day weekend. What we want to do is replace that with some smaller events. Number one, when we do Art Street Fest, there was some issues with whether some sponsors and artists and things that weren't really artists. So what we want to do is go ahead and let the farmers market do their thing on that Saturday, because when we do have Street Art Fest, we have to cancel farmers market. And then we want to go ahead and have the Park and the Art event in Brook Street that weekend. So we have more local artists that are coming. We want to be able to resume Brook Street Park concerts when the incident rate coupled with the proper protocols allows. So we're hoping that'll be sooner rather than later. We would like to plan for July the 4th, but only do fireworks in Wills Park. Don't do any of the other events that require all their deposits and all like that. Let's just plan on doing the fireworks at Wills Park. And the events in the fall, Wire and Wood, the Scarecrows, and the Season of Celebration, we're planning to go forward with those. Although they would be smaller and more family-focused events. For 2022, now we're talking about next year, not this year, we recommend issuing separate requests for proposals for the Taste of Alpharetta, Wire and Wood, and the Brook Street concerts to allow management of these events by a third-party vendor. That's basically to get the city out of on those events, out of having to foot the bill for those events as we're doing right now. What we'd like to do that is phase that in. So for 2022, the RFP would say that the city would subsidize the events at 50% the 2019 budget. And then in 2023, we would supplement it at 25% of the 2019 budget. And then in 2024, the city would not subsidize that event moving forward. We would recommend continue with the city-sponsored events, the Blue Moon Festivals, the European Market, the Farmers Market, Grilling and Gridiron, the 9K, 5K, Mayor's Corporate Challenge, Memorial Day Tribute, the MLK St. James Walk, the Polar Bear Plunge, Pop Fest, and Wine Festival would go on as scheduled in 2022. And then as we look forward as to what we're going to do in the events, we suggest that we look to host, sponsor, or permit events that are good for the city. Events that are meaningful, memorable, and authentic. We want to target specific events to ensure a variety and quality. We would set caps on the number of events in each category. In other words, we could only have so many runs per quarter, so many art festivals per quarter, so that we make sure that we're having a good quality event. We would define requirements for the events so the events would be benefits to Alpharetta. In other words, we don't want a 5013C outside of Alpharetta coming to Alpharetta and hosting an event to raise money for their events. We want to concentrate on our Alpharetta events. Then we want to make sure that we're looking at multi-day events, health and wellness events, cultural events, as well as inclusive events as we move forward. So that's basically what our recommendations for the events are moving forward. And certainly be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Councilman Hypes.
First of all, thank you so much for, a lot of thought was put into that and driving toward a goal, so I appreciate that. Just a thought. Clearly, there's not enough time to do a spring, May time Taste of Alpharetta. However, if the numbers are good in May, June, such that there could be a taste of Alpharetta in the fall. My thinking is anything that announces to the region that Alpharetta's back, we are open, we are celebrating, we are in a post-COVID environment. We have a new hotel that's opened up downtown. I don't know if it's doable. I know it would be out of sequence, but there would be a reason for it. I think they held the Masters this year in the fall because they wanted people to know we're still playing golf over here in Augusta. But I think the Taste of Alpharetta brings more people into town than any of those events. And anything that announces to the world, we're open for business, we're celebrating over here, we've got great restaurants and cuisine, and we're not afraid to be shoulder to shoulder because COVID's behind us if the numbers are there.
Okay.
Any other feedback or questions? Morgan, you did a heck of a job. Only one comment. No, I appreciate all the time y'all have put into this. There's a lot of thought and all your efforts over the past year trying to adapt to an ever-changing target. It's much appreciated. I know you couldn't do what you wanted to be able to do, but you did the best you could. We appreciate all of it.
Certainly my hat's off to the staff, not only of our department, but the whole city. I think there's not a city anywhere that's pivoted any better than we did. And that's collectively, but individually, I think our department pivoted extremely well. In fact, when most people were going home, our parks guys were heading to the parks because people were coming to the parks and people started using them, and it certainly has increased the conversation for the need of parks and the green space that we so covet here. So, we're excited about what's coming, and the only thing that I don't, and I hate to push, is that I don't know who can tell me whether we can go ahead and cancel the Taste of Alpharetta officially right now? Do we have to wait for a vote, or do I have that as director since I have the guidance?
This is just a workshop, but we can ask individual council members, does anybody object to canceling the Taste of Alpharetta under current circumstances?
Then I'll take the appropriate action on that. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our final agenda item under workshops. So now's your opportunity for public comment. If anybody in the public wants to come forward and speak up, now's your chance. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Reports, I believe we have a couple of appointments. Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. Strike that on my agenda.
Mayor Gilvin?
Yes.
Excuse me. Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, you were scheduled to appoint Mary Farr as your appointee to the Board of Ethics. We hadn't officially
Thank you for the reminder.
You're welcome.
Yes, I have spoken with Ms. Farr, and yes, she's willing to serve in that role. Forgive me.
Quite all right. Ms. Richard, do you have an appointment you would like to make?
I do. I have an appointment to the Cultural Arts Commission. I am appointing Mary Beth Cornelius as my member to the board. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Any other reports from council? Seeing none. Unfortunately, I have to ask that we have a motion to adjourn into executive session this evening.
Mayor, I do have a quick report.
You're not on my agenda, Bob. Please proceed.
Later, because of the threat of black ice overnight,
Yeah,
Pete's crews are coming in around 3 in the morning to do what they have to do to take care of the bridges and the roads and to do surveillance on all that. So
Okay.
Andy Wheeler with the Emergency Operations Center is also, we're not cranking up the EOC, but he's sending us information on what he hears and learns. And so there'll be a lot of communication going on overnight, and we'll do the best we can.
Thank you, sir. We do appreciate it. I know it's been a mess out west where it's hit and frozen, put people out of power again. Don't want to have any of that around here if we can avoid it. So that being said, now I'll ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
You didn't say?
Motion to adjourn into executive section, and thank you, Mary Farr, for serving.
Do you approve the motion to adjourn?
I
into
approve,
executive? Okay. So we have a motion and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell and Councilwoman Richard. All those in favor of adjourning into executive session, please vote yes. And it does pass unanimously.
Doing it here, right?
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Yeah.
Obviously not. I did ask her to put that on.
Well, I hate it. I'm like, what? I'm just going by what she writes.
Mary Farr wasn't watching, Donald.
She would laugh if she were.
Mayor's trying to save you.
No.